It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for Season 8 of The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the official Season 8 synopsis. So this is very exciting. Now, obviously, we've not really got a detailed explanation about what All Out War is going to look like in the TV show. We have got glimpses of what it might look like with the trailers and the promotional images that we've seen so far, but nothing in terms of details regarding what we're actually going to see or the storyline that's going to play out. So it's going to be very exciting to see what it says on the synopsis. I've actually not read it yet, so I'm going to read it and discuss it as I read it. So the synopsis comes from an article from We Got This Covered. I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can go there and read the actual article as well as the synopsis. So with that being said, let's get right into the synopsis. The synopsis reads, last season, Rick Grimes and his group of survivors were confronted with their deadliest challenge yet. With the comfort of Alexandria, they let their guards down, only to be reminded how brutal the world they live in can be. So this is basically a reminder of Season 7, nothing new here. Then it goes on to say, feeling powerless under Negan's rule and demands, Rick advocated the group play along. But seeing that Negan couldn't be reasoned with, Rick began rallying together other communities affected by the Saviors. And with the support of the Hilltop and Kingdom, they finally have enough firepower to contest the Saviors. So again, nothing new. This is basically a recap of what Season 7 was. The first part was basically the first half of Season 7, and the second half of this part of the synopsis is the second half of Season 7. So now we go on to actually get into Season 8. So it's a pretty long synopsis, but half of it is like a recap, which is good, but I hope that there's something interesting and exciting in the second half of the synopsis as well. So the rest of the synopsis reads, this season, Rick brings all-out war to Negan and his forces. The Saviors are larger, better equipped, and ruthless. But Rick and the unified communities are fighting for the promise of a brighter future. The battle lines are drawn as they launch into a kinetic, action-packed offensive. So very exciting. There's a few things I did notice here. The first is that it says Rick brings all-out war to Negan. So that tells us two things. One, they are actually going to be using all-out war as a phrase to advertise this season, at least the first half of it, and that's basically going along with what was in the comics, so I'm glad they are keeping that and they didn't change the name, because obviously they didn't use March to War, they used Rise Up. So, I had a feeling that they might change All Out War to something else as well, but they didn't do that, which is good. I actually believe that's a good call on their part to keep All Out War as it is. The title of it, of course. The second thing that this part tells us is that Rick brings the war to Negan. So Rick is going to attack Negan first when we come back, which indicates or further proves that Rick is going to attack Negan's sanctuary when we get into the season, which is very exciting. The next thing that it tells us, the Saviors are larger, better equipped, and ruthless. So obviously we know they're ruthless. We know they're larger, but in terms of them being better equipped, we haven't really seen that too much. We know that they do a lot of planning and things like that, but we haven't really seen them being too much better equipped, other than obviously what happened in Season 6, Episode 16 with the roadblocks and everything, but we haven't seen too much of them being better equipped in terms of weapons or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And the last thing that this part tells me is something that Scott Gimple said a few months ago. He said that this season is going to be action-packed and it's going to be kinetic. Guess what? Those words are in the synopsis itself. It says that they launch into a kinetic, action-packed offensive. So they are on the offense. So they are attacking. So that goes back to Rick taking the war to Negan. So that's cool, but also it's going to be kinetic and action-packed. So that's basically going back to what Scott M. Gimple said. So we kind of know that at least it doesn't seem to be a hype anymore because it's in the synopsis itself. So it seems like it will definitely be action-packed and kinetic, which is very cool. Now the synopsis goes on to say, up until now, Survival has been the focus of Rick and our group, but it's not enough. They have to fight to take back their freedom so that they can live, so that they can rebuild. As with any battle, there will be losses, casualties, but with Rick leading the Alexandrian forces, Maggie leading the hilltop, and King Ezekiel leading the kingdom, Negan and the Savior's grip on this world may finally be coming to an end. Very exciting, mainly because of a few things that I noticed in this part of the synopsis. Obviously, the part about them fighting for freedom, we've seen that in the Rise Up synopsis before in season 7, so that's not really anything new. The part with them having to rebuild, that's not new as well, because we know with war comes destruction, and with destruction comes the rebuilding of the communities and things like that. But there's two very interesting things. One is that it says there will be losses. Obviously, we know it's all out war. There will definitely be losses, but for that to be presented in such a manner in the synopsis leads me to think that we will definitely get a few major deaths, because they've been saying all over that there's going to be losses, there's going to be people dying. Actors have come out and said that there's going to be a lot of deaths and things like that. So that leads me to think that there's going to be at least one major death. So it's going to be very interesting to see who that might be. I have an idea and I've discussed that before, but it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. But the last thing that I want to discuss that comes from this part of the synopsis, which is very cool, is that it says Rick is leading Alexandria. That's obvious, we know that. King Ezekiel leading the kingdom, we know that. But there's something very interesting here. It says Maggie leading the hilltop. So it seems like Maggie has, I guess, officially gained control of the hilltop. Up until this point, she hasn't really been the official leader. She's been there, she's been leading, but she hasn't really been referred to as the leader. But it seems like in season 8, we're gonna get to see more and more of Maggie leading the hilltop, which is very cool. And that leads to another point, which is what happens to Gregory. So that's gonna be very interesting as well to see what happens with him. But one other thing I want to say is that with Maggie leading the hilltop, we kind of got a spark of that in the season 7 finale, 7/16. So I'm sure that that's going to continue, and they're going to focus more and more on Maggie being the actual leader at the hilltop, which is very cool. But that's basically it for the synopsis. Obviously, the new season comes back October 22nd. Very excited for it, and I hope that All Out War lives up to expectations and they give us something very exciting. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.